Hey guys, tonight we are leaving the comfort of your warm, safe bed for the dust, the grit, and the bureaucratic nightmares of ancient Rome. But we're not heading for the gladiator arena or the Senate floor. No, our journey is far more critical and arguably far more treacherous because the entire city's survival depends on it. You are an Aquarius, a water inspector, and the fate of 1,000,000 thirsty Romans rests on your shoulders and your meticulous, utterly unglamorous ledger. Imagine the pressure. The average Roman citizen, splashing their face with water from a public fountain, has no idea that your morning involves wading through knee-deep, shockingly cold water in a pitch-black tunnel, or haggling with a corrupt magistrate over the width of a pipe. You probably won't survive this job for long if you're afraid of the dark, confined spaces, or the occasional venomous snake that has decided the Aqua Claudia makes for a lovely summer home. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, feel free to drop a comment below telling me where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The scroll arrives just after dawn, delivered by a grim-faced slave who looks like he hasn't slept. The wax seal is imperial, a stark eagle pressed into the material. It's not an invitation, it's a summons. Your heart does that familiar, unpleasant little sink. You break the seal and unroll the papyrus. His words are dry and precise, penned by some soft-handed clerk in a sunlit office a mile away. Aqua Claudia. Inspection run. Full course. From the springs to the Piscina Limaria. Report anomalies, illegal taps, structural compromises. Expected duration, 10 days. That's it. No good luck. No thank you for your service. Just 10 days of walking, climbing, and crawling along one of the most complex pieces of engineering the world has ever known. You heave a sigh that comes from the very soles of your sandals. 10 days. Your mind immediately starts cataloguing the horrors. The Claudia is the workhorse of the city's 11 aqueducts, but she's a temperamental beast. She runs for over 43 miles, most of it underground, but with sections leaping across valleys on soaring arches that make even the birds nervous. You think of the tunnels near the source, so narrow you have to shuffle sideways, your tunic scraping against the wet, slime-covered brick. You think of the siphons, those terrifying inverted waterfalls of water forced through lead pipes under immense pressure, any one of them a potential catastrophe waiting to happen. And you think of the paperwork. By Jupiter, the paperwork. Every crack, every mossy patch, every suspiciously damp patch of soil on the surface above the channel has to be noted, measured, and cross-referenced in your ledger. Your gear is simple, almost laughably so for the task at hand. A bronze dioptra, a sophisticated sighting instrument for checking gradients, sits in its wooden case. It's your most prized possession, a gift from your old mentor. Next to it is a coil of sturdy rope, an oil lamp with enough fuel for a few hours of darkness, a stylus and wax tablets for quick notes, and the heavy official ledger bound in leather. You pack a spare tunic, a lump of hard cheese, and a sack of spelt bread. This isn't a pleasure trip. You strap a small knife to your belt, not for fighting, though the world outside the city walls has its dangers, but for cutting away vines that try to choke the air vents or prying open rusted maintenance hatches. You step out of your modest apartment near the Aventine Hill. The city is already a roaring beast of noise and smell. Carts clatter on the cobblestones, merchants scream their prices. The scent of baking bread mixes unpleasantly with the stench of the Cloaca Maxima, the great sewer. This is the chaos you are leaving behind, the chaos you are, in a small way, trying to keep hydrated and sane. Your first destination is the Castellum Aquae, the distribution fortress near the Porta Capena, where the Claudia disgorges her life-giving flow into the city's network. You need to check the initial flow rate and clarity before you begin the long trek backwards against the current of water to its source. It's a counterintuitive start, but it's the only way to know what's happening to the water along its journey. As you trudge through the crowded streets, you can't help but look at the people around you. The woman filling a pot at a fountain, the kids splashing in a public basin, the senator being carried in his litter, probably complaining about the water pressure in his private villa. None of them see you. None of them know that your 10-day walk is what stands between them and thirst. Historians still argue whether the average Roman truly appreciated the scale of this achievement, or if they just took the endless flow of clean water for granted, much like we take electricity for granted today. You push through the crowd, the weight of the ledger in your pack feeling heavier with every step. The city gate looms ahead, an arched mouth leading out of the chaos and into the quiet, green, and utterly unpredictable countryside. The change is immediate, almost shocking. One moment you're engulfed in the deafening, sweaty press of humanity at the Porta Capena. The next you're through the archway, and the world opens up. The city's roar doesn't so much fade as it is sliced off, replaced by the whisper of a breeze through cypress trees and the distant, lonely cry of a hawk. The Via Latina stretches ahead, a ribbon of pale stone dust unwinding through the green, rolling hills of Latium. Your sandals crunch on the gravel, a sound that is now the loudest thing in your universe. This is the first and often the most deceptive part of the journey, the peace. It's a peace that makes your shoulders, tight from a lifetime of city living, begin to untense. It's a peace that invites you to let your guard down. And that, as you learned the hard way on your first inspection, is a fatal mistake. You walk for an hour, the sun climbing, its heat, a dry pressure on your back. The Claudia is your silent companion. For these first few miles outside the city, she runs underground, a hidden artery. There are no grand arches to follow, just a subtle path of maintenance markers, a slightly different type of grass, a line of stones placed by surveyors a century ago. Your job is to walk directly above her, your eyes scanning the ground for the telltale signs of trouble. A sunken patch of earth could indicate a collapsed tunnel below. An unnaturally lush and green patch of clover might signal a leak, the water nourishing the soil from underneath. You see a cluster of mushrooms growing in a perfect circle, a fairy ring the locals would call it with superstition. You call it a leak indicator. You stop, unsling your pack, and get out your wax tablet. Mile marker 1.2 from gate, you scratch with your stylus. Signs of surface moisture. Investigate on return journey. You can't stop for every damp patch now. The source is 40 miles away. The initial survey is about mapping suspicions, creating a list of crimes for the water to be guilty of, which you will then investigate on your way back to the city. This is where you deploy your first piece of serious equipment, the one that makes you feel less like a simple maintenance man and more like a philosopher-scientist. You unpack the dioptra. It's a beautiful thing, a circular bronze plate marked with degrees, with sighting tubes mounted on top. You set it up on its tripod, ensuring it's level. The aqueduct's gradient is its lifeblood. Too steep and the water will erode the channel walls. Too shallow and it will stagnate, becoming a breeding ground for algae and vermin. The official specs for the Claudia demand a drop of no more than a few inches every 100 feet. It's an almost imperceptible slope, but it has to be constant. You peer through the sighting tube, aligning it with a distant marker you know from previous trips. The bubble in the water level shifts slightly. You make a note, gradient nominal. It's a small victory. One of the quirky, fringe bits of knowledge you possess is that the lead surveyors who plotted these courses were so accurate that modern engineers, with their laser levels and satellite GPS, still find themselves in awe of the precision achieved with little more than sticks, sighting instruments, and a whole lot of patience. You pack the dioptra away and keep walking. The road is quieter now, just the occasional farmer driving a cart loaded with produce for the city markets. They give you a wide berth, eyeing your official-looking gear with a mixture of respect and suspicion. You are the law out here, the long arm of the Roman state reaching into their pastoral world. To them, the aqueduct is just a thing, a part of the landscape. They don't see the genius of it. They see the restrictions. They can't build too close to it. They can't divert its water for their fields. You represent the power that denies them that resource. It's a lonely feeling. The mainstream historical fact that always strikes you here is the sheer cost of this system. The Claudia alone required over 300,000 tons of stone and concrete to build, a staggering investment that no other civilization on Earth would even contemplate. And you are its sole guardian on this stretch of road. The weight of that investment settles on you, a physical pressure. A rabbit darts across the path ahead, a blur of brown. You watch it go, envying its simple, unburdened life. The sun is high now, and the initial peace of the countryside has been replaced by a monotonous, buzzing heat. You take a sip from your water skin, not from the aqueduct, but from a public well you passed back near the city. You won't taste the Claudia's water until you reach its source, where it is purest. For now, you just walk, your eyes fixed on the ground, listening to the silence, and waiting for the land to tell you its secrets. The first real evidence of your charge appears as the land begins to dip into a shallow valley. It starts not with a grand structure, but with a subtle hum in the earth, a vibration you feel through the soles of your sandals before you hear it with your ears. It's the sound of moving water, a low, powerful rumble that grows from a whisper to a steady, thrumming presence. Then you see it. A simple, unadorned stone building, little more than a shed built into the hillside. This is a caput aquae, a head gate, one of the many minor control points along the line. It's here that the Claudia, after her subterranean journey from the city, decides to reveal herself for a brief, glorious moment. You approach the small, heavy door, fumbling with the iron key on your belt ring. The lock is stiff, rusted from exposure and disuse. With a grunt and a shove, it gives way. The smell hits you first. The damp, cool, mineral-rich breath of the mountain spring. A scent so clean, it almost burns your city-dulled lungs. You step inside, from the bright Italian sun into a twilight world. The air is instantly 10 degrees cooler. Your eyes adjust to the gloom, lit only by the slivers of light from the doorway and a few narrow ventilation shafts cut into the ceiling. And there she is. The speakers, the water channel itself. It's a masterpiece of simplicity. A rectangular conduit, about 6 feet high and 3 feet wide, lined with waterproof pinkish-red Cocciopesto plaster that's as smooth as polished marble. The water flows through it with a purpose, a silent green glass torrent moving with a speed that belies its seemingly gentle slope. It's mesmerizing. You stand there for a long moment, just watching the water, the heart of Rome pulsing right in front of you. This is the reality behind the public fountains and the bathhouses. This quiet, relentless, engineered flow. Your inspection here is methodical, a ritual you've performed 100 times. You kneel at the channel's edge, ignoring the cold seep of water into your tunic. First, you check the water level against the marked gauge stones set into the wall. It's perfect, exactly as it should be. Then, you dip a clean ceramic cup into the flow and hold it up to the light from a ventilation shaft. You're looking for clarity, for sediment. The water is brilliantly clear, with just a few motes of sparkling mineral dust dancing in the light. This is good. This is water from the Anio Valley, still pure and untouched by the filth of the city. You take a sip. It's cold, so cold it makes your teeth ache, and it has a distinct flinty taste. This is the taste of the mountains, the taste of health. You make a note, caput valitum, flow nominal. Clarity excellent. But you're not just here to admire the water. You run your hand along the plaster of the channel walls, feeling for cracks, for soft spots, for the gritty texture of dissolving mortar. You check the bronze grates that keep larger debris, leaves, branches, the occasional unfortunate animal, from travelling further down the line. They're clear. Everything is as it should be, and that's what worries you, a little. Historians still argue whether the Roman engineers built in such overkill to account for centuries of neglect, or if they simply had so much slave labour and raw material that good enough was never in their vocabulary. You suspect it's the latter. As you prepare to leave, securing the heavy door behind you, you take one last look at the flowing water. This is the easy part. The aqueduct is behaving itself. A docile, well-mannered river in a stone box. You know it won't last. The landscape ahead is broken by valleys and rivers, and the Claudia will have to contend with them. The gentle flow you see here will soon be subjected to forces that test the very limits of engineering. You turn your back on the caput aquae and continue your walk, the map in your mind already tracing the path to the next challenge, where the water leaves the safety of the ground and takes a literal leap of faith. The gentle hum of the flowing water becomes a distant memory as the path before you descends sharply into a much deeper, wider valley. The air changes, growing heavier, and the sound that reaches you now is not a rumble but a roar. This is the Fosso dell'Acqua Rossa, and it's here that the Claudia faces one of her greatest challenges. You crest a small hill, and the solution comes into view, a sight that never fails to steal your breath. It's not a bridge of arches, not here. Instead, a massive stone fortress, a castellum, straddles the near side of the valley. From it, a row of massive lead pipes, each as thick as your thigh, plunges straight down the cliff face, disappears under the raging river at the valley floor, and then ascends the opposite cliff to another fortress. This is an inverted siphon, and it's arguably the most audacious piece of engineering in the entire system. You're not walking over the valley, you're going down into it. The principle is simple, a quirk of physics the Roman engineers mastered. Water seeks its own level, The pressure from the water descending the pipes forces it up the other side, as long as the destination is lower than the source. The reality, however, is a nightmare of maintenance. You take the narrow, treacherous service path that switchbacks down the cliffside, your hand skimming the rough stone for balance. The roar of the river below grows louder, a constant, pounding threat. The lead pipes are encased in protective concrete sleeves where they are exposed, but you can still feel the vibration coming off them. A powerful, humming energy that speaks of the immense force contained within. A single weak weld, a hairline crack in the lead, and this entire section would explode, unleashing a jet of water that could cut a man in half. Reaching the riverbank, you find the inspection point. A small, damp grotto carved into the cliff where the pipes are accessible before they dive under the riverbed. The air is thick with spray and the smell of wet stone and hot metal. This is where you earn your salary. Your job is to check the collegia, the soldered joints between the 10-foot-long lead pipes. You run your hands over each joint, feeling for the slightest bulge, the tiniest seepage of moisture. The lead is cool to the touch, but the vibration is intense, buzzing up your arms. It's a tedious, nerve-wracking task. You have to be methodical, patient. A quirky, fringe tidbit you once heard from an old Greek engineer whispers in your mind. They said the best solder for these joints was a mix of lead and tin, but that some crews, to save money, would add cheap silver, believing it made the joint stronger like a coin. It probably just made it more brittle. You tap each joint with a small bronze hammer, listening to the sound. A clean, dull thunk is good. A higher-pitched ping might mean a hidden flaw. It's an art as much as a science. After an hour of meticulous inspection, your fingers are numb and your ears are ringing from the river's roar. You find one joint that worries you. There's a faint, white, crystalline deposit around the seam. Minerals left behind by a slow, weeping leak. It's not a catastrophe, not yet, but it's a promise of one. You note it in your ledger, sketching the specific joint's location. This will require a specialist crew, men who can drain the siphon and re-solder the joint under pressure. It's an expensive, dangerous repair. As you climb back up the far side of the valley, your legs burning with the effort, you reflect on the mainstream historical fact that this single siphon, just one component of one aqueduct, used over 200 tons of lead. The sheer volume of material is staggering, and it makes you think of the debates you've overheard in smoky taverns back in Rome. Arguments about whether the lead pipes are slowly poisoning the populace. You've heard the theories, that it causes madness, sterility. You shake your head, dismissing the thought as you reach the top, gulping in the fresher air. The water in the channel on this side of the valley is the same water, but it feels different now. It's been through a trial by pressure, a violent descent and ascent. It has earned its flow. You take a final look back at the siphon, a scar of technology on the natural landscape, and continue your walk. The memory of the vibrating lead still humming in your bones. Leaving the thunder of the siphon behind feels like leaving a riot for a library. The landscape softens again, and the Claudia, having proven her mettle, ducks back underground, preferring the quiet darkness of the earth to the dramatic valleys. Your path leads you to an unassuming hillside, marked only by a single, squat stone structure that looks like a tomb. This is it, the main entrance to the subterranean world. The key you used before is useless here. This lock is larger, more complex, and the iron door is reinforced with bands of rusting metal. It takes 2 hands and most of your body weight to turn the key. The groan of the hinges is a deep, protesting sound that echoes down into the blackness ahead. You light your oil lamp. The flame wavers, then steadies, pushing back the absolute dark just a few feet. You take a deep breath, filling your lungs with the last of the sun-warmed, flower-scented air, and then you step inside. The door swings shut behind you with a final resonant clang that seals you in. The silence is immediate and total, broken only by the drip of water somewhere in the distance and the frantic beating of your own heart. This is the part of the job they never put on the commemorative arches. The tunnel is narrower than the channel at the Caput Aqui, and you have to hunch over, your back already complaining. The air is cold, damp, and smells of wet clay, rotting leaves, and something else, something ancient and mineral. You shuffle forward, your lamp casting dancing, monstrous shadows on the curved brick-lined walls. The ceiling is low, and you quickly learn to walk with one hand constantly feeling the cold, slimy bricks above you, a precaution against knocking yourself unconscious on a low-hanging outcrop. The sound of the water is different in here, muffled, closer. a constant gurgling companion just a few feet to your left, on the other side of a low dividing wall. You are walking in the Iter, the maintenance pathway, parallel to the flowing Specus. Your inspection here is a tactile, intimate nightmare. You have to feel everything. You run your free hand along the walls, your fingers searching for the telltale cracks that are invisible in the lamplight. You're looking for patches of efflorescence, white salt deposits that weep from the mortar, signaling leaks. Every 10 paces, you stop and hold the lamp up to the ceiling, checking for fissures or roots that have broken through from the world above. It's slow, painstaking work. A quirky bit of knowledge pops into your head, something an old-timer told you. The best way to find a major leak isn't to look for water, but to listen for frogs. They find their way in and congregate near steady drips, their croaks echoing for miles in the tunnel. You listen, but hear only the water and your own breathing. You feel a sudden profound loneliness. You are a solitary speck of warmth and light in a cold, dark stone intestine. The mainstream historical fact that Rome had over 400 miles of these underground channels feels less like an achievement and more like a terrifyingly vast labyrinth from which you might never emerge. After what feels like an hour, you come to a junction. A vertical shaft, a puteus, rises into blackness above you, a circle of faint, dusty light visible far, far overhead. This is one of the air vents and also an access shaft. You welcome the sight, a reminder that there is still a world above. But as you pass under it, your lamp flickers, and you see something that makes your blood run cold. Scratches on the wall. Not modern graffiti, but ancient, crude carvings. A phallus for good luck, a simple fish, and a name. Someone was here over a century ago, leaving their mark in the perpetual night. Historians still argue whether these tunnels were maintained by specialized, respected crews, or if it was a punishment detail, a sentence of claustrophobic terror for slaves and criminals. Looking at the desperate, lonely scratchings of Lucius, you feel you have your answer. You quicken your pace, suddenly desperate to reach the next shaft of daylight, the feeling of the walls closing in becoming unbearable. The darkness behind you feels watchful, and the gurgle of the water starts to sound like whispers. The blessed rectangle of daylight at the next puteus is the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. You scramble up the rusty iron rung set into the shaft wall, bursting out of the ground like a creature being born, gasping and blinking in the overwhelming brightness. You lie on the grass for a full minute, just feeling the sun on your face, the solid open earth beneath you. The terror of the tunnel recedes, replaced by the simple, profound relief of being under the sky again. It's in this vulnerable state that you hear them, the rhythmic, metallic clank of Larica segmentata, the overlapping plates of Roman armor. You sit up quickly, your hand instinctively going to the knife on your belt, as a patrol of 4 legionaries emerges from a copse of trees, their red crests bright against the green. The Optio, the junior officer in charge, eyes you with open suspicion. You, covered in grime and slime, crawling out of a hole in the ground, are not a common sight. You, he barks, his voice accustomed to command. State your business. You fumble for your credentials, the bronze tessera that marks you as an imperial Aquarius. He takes it, examines it with a scowl and hands it back. Inspection, he grunts, his tone shifting from hostile to merely dismissive. Rather you than me. Seen anything? This is the other more predictable danger of the job. The aqueducts are vital infrastructure, and the legions are tasked with protecting them from sabotage, bandits, or just opportunistic farmers trying to tap the line. But out here, away from the eyes of their centurions, these patrols can be a law unto themselves. You report the suspicious damp patch you noted earlier, and the legionary just shrugs. Probably just a spring. This whole land is wet. You don't argue. You've learned that engaging the military in a debate about hydrology is a losing battle. Instead, you ask if they've seen any unauthorized activity near the tunnels. The Optio laughs, a short, harsh sound. No one's stupid enough to mess with the water. The penalty is crucifixion. But we did find a sheep that had fallen down an open shaft last week. Took us an hour to haul it out, stupid creature. It's a moment of unexpected camaraderie, a shared complaint about the absurdities of the job. You walk with them for a short while. Their presence a strange comfort. They are a link to the ordered hierarchical world of the city. They complain about their rations, about a centurion with a particular fondness for pointless drills, about the boredom of patrol. It's all mundanely, comfortingly human. One of the younger soldiers, a boy with a face still untouched by the hardness of campaign, asks you a question that surprises you. Is it true the water in there is haunted? My mum says old spirits live in the tunnels. The Optio scoffs, but you see the other soldiers listening. This is the fringe belief, the superstition that clings to such an unnatural stone river. You could mock him, but you remember the scratching of LV/IVS in the dark. Instead, you give a non-committal answer. The water has its own sounds. It's easy to let your mind play tricks in the dark. The boy looks satisfied and slightly relieved. They leave you at a crossroads, their patrol taking them on a different route. The Optio gives you a curt nod. Stay safe, Aquarius. Don't fall in. And then they are gone, their red cloaks disappearing into the trees, the sound of their marching feet fading away. The silence they leave behind is deeper than before. You are alone again, but the encounter has left its mark. It's a reminder that this isn't just an engineering system, it's a military asset. Historians still argue whether the primary threat to the aqueducts was natural decay or human malice, but walking this line, you feel it's a bit of both. The legionaries fear sabotage. You fear the slow, insidious creep of a cracked wall. Both can bring the flow to a halt. You check your map, take a bearing on the sun, and continue your walk. The next major stop is a place of calm and purification, a world away from the dark tunnels and the armed patrols, the settling tanks. The blessed rectangle of daylight at the next Puteus is the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. You scramble up the rusty iron rungs set into the shaft wall, bursting out of the ground like a creature being born, gasping and blinking in the overwhelming brightness. The transition is violent. One moment, you are in a world of compressed, echoing silence, your senses starved of everything but the feel of cold slime and the flicker of your own lamp. The next, you are assaulted by the sheer volume of the open world. The cacophony of crickets, the rustle of leaves in a warm breeze, the blinding gold of the sun, the overwhelming scent of wild thyme and dry earth. You lie on the grass for a full minute, not moving, just feeling the sun bake the tunnel's damp chill from your tunic. The solid, open earth beneath you, a profound reassurance. The terror of the tunnel recedes, replaced by the simple, profound relief of being under the sky again. Your heart slows from a frantic drumbeat to a steady, weary thump. It's in this vulnerable, almost giddy state that you hear them. The rhythmic, metallic clank of Lorica segmentata, the overlapping plates of Roman armor, a sound as familiar and official as the seal on your scroll. You sit up quickly, your hand instinctively going to the knife on your belt. A pointless gesture, but a reflexive one. A patrol of 4 legionaries emerges from a copse of olive trees, their red crests bright and officious against the pastoral green. They move with the bored confidence of men who own the ground they walk on. The Optio, the junior officer in charge, is a man with a face like a clenched fist, tanned leathery by sun and wind. He eyes you with open suspicion. You, covered in grime and slime, crawling out of a hole in the ground like a badger, are not a common sight on his neatly ordered patrol route. You! He barks, his voice accustomed to cutting through noise and dissent. State your business. His hand rests on the pommel of his gladius. It's not quite a threat, but it's a long way from a welcome. You fumble for your credentials, the bronze tessera that marks you as an imperial Aquarius, hanging from a leather thong around your neck. It's cold and heavy in your hand. He takes it, examines the embossed eagle with a scowl, turning it over as if looking for a forgery, and hands it back with a grunt. Inspection, he says, his tone shifting from hostile to merely dismissive, the way a wolf might dismiss a mouse. Rather you than me. Seen anything? Bandits? Tampering? This is the other, more predictable danger of the job. The aqueducts are vital infrastructure, the arteries of the empire, and the legions are tasked with protecting them from sabotage, from rebellious locals, or just from opportunistic farmers trying to tap the line for their parched fields. But out here, miles from the eyes of their centurions, these patrols can be a law unto themselves. They are the law. You report the suspicious damp patch you noted earlier, the unnaturally green circle of clover. The legionary just shrugs, his shoulder plates rasping with the movement. Probably just a spring. This whole land is wet. You city types, you see a puddle and think the world is ending. You don't argue. You've learned that engaging the military in a debate about hydrology or soil saturation is a fast track to being called a pencil-pushing bureaucrat and having your day made unnecessarily difficult. Instead, you ask if they've seen any unauthorized activity near the tunnels, any fresh cart tracks or discarded tools where they shouldn't be. The Optio laughs. a short, harsh sound like rocks grinding together. No one's stupid enough to mess with the water. The penalty is crucifixion. Simple as that. But we did find a sheep that had fallen down an open shaft last week. Stupid creature. Took us an hour to haul it out, bleating the whole time. Stank to high heaven. It's a moment of unexpected, grumpy camaraderie. A shared complaint about the absurdities of their respective duties. You share a brief, weary smile. The common enemy, it seems, is ovine stupidity. You walk with them for a short while, their presence a strange comfort. They are a loud, clanking, sweaty link to the ordered, hierarchical world of the city, a world that suddenly feels very far away. They complain about their rations. The hardtack is full of weevils this month. About a centurion with a particular fondness for pointless drills at dawn. About the soul-crushing boredom of walking the same stretch of countryside day after day. It's all mundanely, comfortingly human. One of the younger soldiers, a boy from Hispania by his accent, with a face that still hasn't lost the softness of youth, asks you a question that surprises you with its earnestness. Is it true, sir? Is the water in there haunted? My mum says old river spirits, Numina, get trapped in the tunnels when they're built. She says they get angry. The Optio scoffs. Don't fill his head with that nonsense, Gaius. But you see the other soldiers listening. A flicker of superstitious curiosity in their eyes. This is the fringe belief. The old magic that clings to such an unnatural stone river. A belief that hasn't quite been stamped out by iron and discipline. You could mock him, but you remember the scratching of LVCIVS in the dark, the profound loneliness of that mark. Instead, you give a careful, non-committal answer. The water has its own voice down there. It echoes. The stones shift and groan with the temperature. It's easy to let your mind play tricks in the dark. You hear things that aren't there. The boy, Gaius, looks satisfied and slightly relieved, as if you've confirmed his fears were at least reasonable. You haven't seen a spirit, but you haven't denied their possible existence either. It feels like a diplomatic victory. They leave you at a crossroads, their patrol taking them on a different route toward a small garrison fort. The Optio gives you a curt nod, a gesture of professional respect. Stay safe, Aquarius. Don't fall in. And then they are gone, their red cloaks disappearing into the dappled light of the trees, the sound of their marching feet fading away, until the only sound is the buzz of insects. The silence they leave behind is deeper, more profound than before. You are alone again, but the encounter has left its mark. It's a stark reminder that this isn't just an engineering system. It's a military asset, a symbol of Roman power that must be defended with steel. Historians still argue whether the primary threat to the aqueducts was natural decay or human malice. But walking this line, you feel it's a bit of both. The legionaries fear deliberate sabotage. You fear the slow, insidious, and utterly apolitical creep of a cracked wall or a faulty joint. Both, in the end, can bring the flow to a halt. You adjust the pack on your shoulders, check your map against the position of the sun, and continue your walk. The next major stop promises a different kind of challenge, one of clarity and calm. The settling tanks. The walk after leaving the legionaries is a quiet, contemplative one. The encounter has left you with a strange mix of reassurance and unease. Their presence was a reminder of the Empire's power, a power that protects the very water you inspect. But their superstitions also highlighted the gulf between the clean, logical lines on an engineer's map and the messy, fearful world of the people who live in the aqueduct's shadow. You follow the gentle ridge of the underground channel for another mile, the sun beginning its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Then you see it, a low, sprawling complex of buildings made of the same sturdy, water-stained brick as the aqueduct itself. This is the Piscina Limaria, the settling tank, and it is the closest thing the Claudia has to a spa day. As you approach, the sound of the water changes. The steady, focused gurgle from the tunnel mouth transforms into a softer, lapping, almost lazy sound. The air here is noticeably cooler and carries a distinct, clean, muddy smell like the bank of a slow-moving river. The main building is a large rectangular structure with a series of arched openings. You enter through a heavy wooden door, and the space opens up into a vast, echoing hall. The heart of the operation is right in front of you, a series of 3 massive, deep pools connected by sluice gates. This is where the Claudia gets a chance to catch her breath. The water from the channel flows into the first pool, and the change is immediate. After its long, turbulent journey, the water here slows almost to a standstill. Freed from its velocity, the suspended particles it has picked up along the way, the fine silt from the Anio River, the bits of gravel, the organic matter, begin their slow, graceful descent to the bottom. You stand at the edge of the first pool, looking down into the greenish depths. The water is cloudy, murky, like an unfinished wine. You can just make out the gentle swirl of sediment settling on the bottom, a slow-motion snowstorm. This is the genius of the system. By simply allowing the water to rest, the engineers achieve a level of purification that would be the envy of many a modern town. It's a lesson in patience, in working with nature rather than against it. Your inspection here is less about feeling for cracks and more about observation and measurement. You use a long, calibrated pole to measure the depth of the sediment in the first tank. It's a significant layer, several fingers thick. You make a note. Tank 1, sediment depth, 4 digits. Schedule dredging for autumn. A crew will have to come in, drain the tank, and shovel out the accumulated muck. It's a filthy job, but a vital one. If the sediment builds up too much, it will start to flow into the next tank, defeating the purpose. You then check the sluice gates between the pools. These are crucial. They allow the clearer water from the top of the first tank to flow into the second, where the process repeats, and then into the third, where the water should be almost perfectly clear. The gates are made of bronze, raised and lowered by heavy screw mechanisms. You check for corrosion, for ease of movement. They are stiff but functional. This is where you encounter one of the more quirky, fringe aspects of Roman water management. As you're making your notes, the site custodian, an old grizzled freedman named Lucius, who has been tending these tanks for 30 years, shuffles over. He points to a series of small terracotta cups submerged at the edge of the final tank. "For the eels," he says with a gap-toothed grin. "They're the final inspectors. If the water is clean enough for them to live, it's clean enough for Rome." You peer in and see a few dark, sinuous shapes gliding through the water. It's a bizarre but effective bioindicator. The mainstream historical fact is that these settling tanks were the primary filtration method, but the use of eels and fish as living water quality testers is a piece of practical wisdom you won't find in Frontinus's official manuals. Historians still argue whether these practices were widespread or just the eccentricities of individual caretakers. You take a final sample from the third tank. The water is brilliantly clear, the flinty taste of the source returned, now softened and chilled by its long subterranean journey. It's perfect. As you leave the hall, the sound of the lapping water fading behind you, you feel a sense of accomplishment. This part of the system is working exactly as intended. The water has been calmed, cleansed, and prepared for the final leg of its journey to the city. But the peace of the settling tanks is deceptive. It's a controlled, engineered peace. Beyond this point, the water will be distributed, its unified flow split into 1,000 separate streams. And that is where the real problems, the human problems, begin. You take a last look at the serene pools, knowing that your next stop will likely be far less orderly. The serene, logical order of the settling tanks feels a world away as you follow the aqueduct's path onward. The sun is higher now, beating down with a dry, insistent heat. The gentle ridge that marks the underground channel leads you through a landscape of small farms and olive groves. It's here, in this zone between the major engineering marvels and the sprawling city, that the aqueduct is at its most vulnerable, not to the forces of nature, but to the relentless, ingenious need of the people who live on the land it crosses. You round a bend in the dirt path, and your inspector's sense, a sixth honed by years of finding trouble, tingles. A few hundred paces away sits a small, rough-built farmhouse, its walls of faded brick and timber. a thin wisp of smoke curling from its roof. It's a picture of rustic poverty. But it's the land between you and the hut that tells the real story. There, on a hillside that should be parched and brown in the late summer heat, is an explosion of green. Tomato plants, heavy with fruit, stand next to rows of vibrant lettuces and deep green onion stalks. It's an oasis, a patch of garden that looks like it's being watered by a perpetual spring. And there, kneeling in the dirt with his back to you, is the culprit. An old man, his back bent, his tunic a collection of patches, humming tunelessly as he gently weeds his improbably lush vegetables. You don't need your dioptra for this. You know a crime when you see it. This is an illegal tap. Somewhere beneath that man's garden, a hole has been punched into the sacred channel of the Aqua Claudia, and a fraction of Rome's lifeblood is being diverted to water his tomatoes. A cold anger mixes with a weary sense of inevitability. This is the most common crime on your ledger, and in a strange way, the most understandable. You stand there for a moment watching him. He hasn't seen you. He's in his own world, tending his little piece of paradise with a care that borders on reverence. He's not a saboteur. He's a gardener, but the law doesn't see it that way. The penalty for an unauthorized tap is severe. A massive fine the man clearly couldn't pay, confiscation of property, or worse. You walk forward, your steps quiet on the dusty earth. He doesn't hear you until you're a few feet away. He startles, turning around with a gasp, his eyes wide with fear. He's ancient, his face a roadmap of wrinkles, his hands gnarled and soil-stained. He sees your official tunic, the ledger in your hand, and the fear in his eyes solidifies into pure terror. He doesn't run. He just sinks back onto his heels, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "Please," he whispers, his voice raspy. "It is only for the vegetables. For my daughter. She is sick. She needs good food." It's the plea you've heard a dozen times. The details change. A sick daughter, a hungry grandson, a barren wife. But the desperation is always the same. You look from his terrified face to the vibrant garden, a testament to his hard work and the stolen water. You think of the millions of gallons flowing just beneath your feet, on their way to fill the opulent fountains of senators and the vast, steaming baths of the wealthy. The sheer, grotesque inequality of it is enough to make your stomach turn. This is the bureaucratic and moral quagmire of your job. The law is absolute, but its application never is. You don't say anything at first. You walk past him, your eyes scanning the ground. You find it quickly, a cleverly disguised trapdoor of wood and dirt, covering a shallow pit that leads down to the tunnel wall. You open it. Below, you can see the neat, waterproof plaster of the speakers, and a small, expertly drilled hole, with a hollowed-out reed pipe siphoning a thin, steady trickle of water into a buried ceramic jar. It's a professional job. The old man didn't do this himself. He probably paid a traveling handyman a few sesterces to install it. A man who knows just how to breach the empire's greatest achievement without causing a catastrophic collapse. Historians still argue whether these small-scale thefts had any real impact on the water supply to the city, or if the authorities largely turned a blind eye to them as a harmless pressure valve for the rural poor. Standing over this old man's garden, the debate feels abstract and heartless. You look at him. He is weeping silently, his face in his hands. He expects to be ruined. You make a show of consulting your ledger, your stylus poised. You could write the citation. It would be the easiest thing in the world. Instead, you look him in the eye. "This tap," you say, your voice low and firm, "it is poorly made. It will clog with sediment in a week. The pressure will blow the pipe. It is a temporary thing. You understand? Temporary." You hold his gaze until a flicker of understanding dawns in his tear-filled eyes. He nods slowly. You make a note in your ledger, but it's not a citation. It's a reminder to yourself. Mile 32. Minor surface seepage. Monitor. You close the ledger with a definitive snap. "Fix it," you say before turning and walking away. You don't look back. You know you've just broken about 10 imperial regulations. But for the first time all day, you feel like you've actually done your job. Leaving the old man and his garden behind, you feel a peculiar mix of guilt and righteousness. You've subverted the very law you're sworn to uphold, yet you feel more like a guardian of the aqueduct than you have all day. The moral calculus of a dripping tap versus a starving family isn't covered in the official manuals. You push the thought aside as the landscape begins to change, the gentle, tunnel-friendly hills giving way to a broader, deeper valley. The air itself seems to shift, charged with a new energy, and then you see it. Not a hidden caput or a low, settling tank, but a line of giants marching across the land. The arcades. The Aqua Claudia, having run her course underground, now needs to maintain her precious, minuscule gradient across the Valle della Molara. To do this, the engineers didn't go around or under. They went over. A triple-tiered colonnade of massive, rust-coloured brick arches soars into the sky, each arch framing a perfect picture of the blue horizon beyond. It's a sight designed to inspire awe, to scream Roman power and ingenuity to anyone living in the countryside. And it works. You stop and just stare for a long moment, the scale of it humbling even to you, who've seen it a dozen times. The sound here is the wind whistling through the countless arches, a low, mournful hum that is the valley's new natural song. The inspection is a test of nerve. You walk slowly, your body pressed against the channel wall, away from the sheer drop. Your job is to check the integrity of the arches themselves. You're looking for cracks in the brickwork, for mortar that has been eroded by centuries of wind and rain. You tap the bricks with your hammer, listening for the hollow sound that might indicate a void within. The wind is a constant companion up here, a roaring in your ears that makes it hard to concentrate. A quirky piece of trivia surfaces in your mind, something you read about the original construction. They used lightweight pumice concrete for the upper levels of these arcades to reduce the weight on the lower arches, a sophisticated understanding of load-bearing principles that wouldn't be rediscovered for over 1,000 years. You run your hand over the joints, feeling the precision of the work. It's flawless, but then you see it. On the leeward side of the arcade, where the wind drives rain with the most force, a crack has appeared in the mortar between two massive stones. It's not wide, but it's deep, and a small, hardy plant has taken root in it, its roots slowly, inexorably prying the stones apart. This is how it begins, not with a dramatic collapse, but with a seed and a drop of water. You get out your wax tablet, your hand shaking slightly from the altitude and the wind. Arch 73, western face, you scratch out. Hairline fracture with vegetative incursion, priority for repointing. Historians still argue whether the Roman use of concrete was a lost art, a secret recipe, or simply a technique that became economically unfeasible after the empire's decline. Looking at this crack, you think the secret wasn't just in the mix, but in the endless, vigilant maintenance that kept the plants out. You take one last look at the incredible vista, the world laid out at your feet. Then you begin the careful, heart-pounding descent back to solid ground, the wind whipping at your back like a warning. Back on solid ground, the memory of the soaring arcades is replaced by a more terrestrial, but no less critical concern. The water, having crossed the valley in its sky-bound channel, now descends back to earth, ready to be distributed. But before it reaches the public fountains and private villas of Rome, it must pass through a final, hidden gauntlet, the labyrinth of distribution pipes. And for that, there is one primary material, lead, plumbum. The word itself feels heavy and toxic in the mind. Your next stop is a small, nondescript distribution chamber, a castellum divisorium nestled in the shadow of the great arches. This is where the unified flow of the Claudia is split into separate streams, and where the water's greatest hidden danger lies. The chamber is cool and dark, a stark contrast to the sun-drenched valley outside. The air here has a distinct metallic tang. The main channel enters and feeds into a large circular tank. From this tank, a series of smaller pipes, each about the width of your forearm, branch out like arteries from a heart. These are the lead pipes that will carry water to different regions of the city. Your task is to inspect the fistulae, the official stamped lead pipes, for the city's use, but also to check for any unofficial, illicit connections. You run your hands over the cool, dull grey surface of the pipes, feeling for the raised stamps that mark them as imperial property. The lead is smooth, almost soft to the touch. It's a disquieting material, so malleable and useful, yet you can't ignore the whispers that have followed it for years. Your inspection point isn't at the base, it's at the top. A narrow, vertigo-inducing staircase is carved into the side of one of the massive piers, a service path for the brave or the foolish. You take a deep breath and begin to climb. The stone steps are worn smooth by decades of feet like yours, and there is no handrail. The higher you go, the more the wind tugs at your tunic, threatening to pluck you from the wall and send you tumbling down. You don't look down. You keep your eyes fixed on the next step, your hands pressed flat against the rough sun-warmed brick. This is the part of the job that separates the clerks from the inspectors. A fear of heights is a luxury you cannot afford. Reaching the top is like stepping onto a stone highway in the sky. The channel itself is covered here, a continuous vaulted ceiling protecting the water from evaporation and debris, but a narrow maintenance walkway runs alongside it. You are now over 100 feet in the air. The view is breathtaking, or it would be, if your breath wasn't already caught in your throat from the climb. You can see for miles the path you've walked, the distant settling tanks, the ribbon of the Via Latina, and far, far away, the hazy smudge on the horizon that is Rome. It's a perspective few ever get. Up here, you are not just an inspector. You are a god surveying a world sustained by the stone river you are walking upon. This is where you confront the modern debate head-on. You've heard the theories, discussed in low voices in taverns and sometimes even in the halls of the curious wealthy, that lead slowly poisons the mind, that it causes lethargy, madness, even sterility. They call it Saturnism, the sickness of Saturn. They point to the erratic behavior of some emperors, the general malaise of the urban populace, and they whisper, it's the water. Standing in this chamber, surrounded by tons of the stuff, the theory feels less like a fringe idea and more like a palpable threat. You know the official line. The hard, mineral-rich water of the aqueducts quickly coats the inside of the pipes with a layer of limescale, a protective crust that separates the water from the lead. It's what the engineers will tell you with absolute confidence. But is it always perfect? Does the coating hold in every pipe, at every joint? The doubt is a worm in your mind. Your inspection becomes a search for evidence of the poison. You're not just looking for leaks now, you're looking for the telltale signs of corrosion. You examine the solder joints with a new intensity, looking for the white, crystalline lead carbonate deposits you saw at the siphon, a substance so sweet-tasting the Romans sometimes used it as a condiment, unknowingly sprinkling poison on their food. You find a few minor deposits, which you meticulously note. A quirky, unsettling piece of knowledge surfaces. Some of the wealthiest patricians, believing lead gave water a sweeter, superior taste, actually preferred to have their water run through longer lead pipes to improve its flavor. They were, in effect, paying extra to be poisoned. The irony is so dark it's almost laughable. The mainstream historical fact is undeniable. Rome's complex water system, with its extensive use of lead, was a monumental achievement that supported an enormous urban population. But here, in the quiet gloom of the distribution chamber, the achievement feels ambiguous. You take a final sample from the main tank before the water enters the lead network. It tastes clean and cold. Then, on a grim impulse, you loosen a plug at the end of one of the smaller lead pipes and catch a little of the water that has been standing in it. It tastes different. There's a faint, almost imperceptible flat sweetness to it, a metallic tang on the tongue that wasn't there before. Is it your imagination, fueled by the whispers? Or is it real? Historians still argue whether lead poisoning was a significant factor in the empire's decline, or merely a minor footnote. Holding the two samples of water, one from the channel and one from the pipe, you feel like you are holding the debate in your own hands. You make a note about the solder deposits, but you say nothing of the taste. Some questions, you decide, are beyond your pay grade. You pack your gear, leaving the heavy, silent pipes behind, and continue toward the city, the metallic taste lingering in your mouth like a question you can't answer. The taste of the lead-tinged water is still a phantom on your tongue as you approach the final major structure before the city proper. The journey has felt long, a pilgrimage from the wild purity of the mountain springs through every conceivable challenge of engineering and human nature. Now on the outskirts of the sprawling metropolis, the Aqua Claudia must undergo her last rites of purification and organization. You crest a small hill, and there it is, the main Piscina Limaria, the great settling tank that serves as the gateway to Rome. It's not a single building like the one you saw earlier, but a vast fortified complex, a water castle standing sentinel before the city walls. This is where the journey ends for the water, and where your inspection reaches its most critical phase. The scale is immense. The complex is surrounded by a high wall, and you have to show your tessera to stern-faced guards at the gate. These are not the bored legionaries of the countryside, but specialized vigiles who protect the city's water with religious fervor. Inside, the air is a hive of controlled activity. The roar of the aqueduct is here channeled into a deep, thunderous rush as the water from the Claudia and also from the Anio Novus, another major aqueduct, pours into a massive, divided intake basin. Engineers and slaves move with purpose along narrow catwalks, operating sluice gates with massive winches. This isn't just a place where water settles. It's a distribution hub where the supply for the entire city is managed. Your simple, solitary inspection feels suddenly small in the face of this organized chaos. Your contact here is the curator aquarum, a senior official named Marcus, a man with ink-stained fingers and the perpetually worried expression of someone who knows a million people are waiting for him to not make a mistake. He greets you not with a handshake, but by thrusting a wax tablet into your hands. Claudia's inflow is down 7% from last month's reading, he says without preamble. Anio Novus is holding steady. I need to know where your water is going before I can balance the distribution to the regions. The Aventine Hill is complaining about pressure again. This is the reality of your job distilled. You are a detective, and the water is your witness. The crime is loss, and the culprit is somewhere along the 43-mile path you've just walked. You and Marcus climb to the top of the main tank, a vast open-air pool the size of a small lake. The water, having traveled dozens of miles, is here for its final, dramatic cleanse. The engineering is breathtakingly simple and effective. The tank is designed to create a gentle circular current. The heavier sediment, sand, gravel, is flung to the outer edges by centrifugal force, while the lighter, organic matter collects in a calm center. Slaves in small boats are already at work, using long-handled nets to skim leaves and debris from the center, while others will later dredge the settled silt from the perimeter. It's a continuous, endless process. Marcus points to a series of outlet pipes at varying depths. "We draw the clearest water from the top here," he shouts over the roar. The bottom outlets are for flushing the sewers and for the industrial districts. Not all water is created equal, even here. This hierarchical distribution of water quality is a mainstream historical fact, a masterclass in practical resource management. The best water goes to drinking fountains, the middling quality to bathhouses, and the dregs to flush away the city's waste. Your job is to corroborate your findings with the official numbers. You compare your measurement of the sediment layer from the upstream settling tank with the complex's own records. You report the leaky joint at the siphon, the minor seepage you monitored near the farm, and the crack in the arcade. Marcus listens, making notes. He scoffs at the old man's tap. "A drop in the ocean," he mutters. But he becomes very interested in the siphon. That could account for the loss. Get me the repair cost estimate by tomorrow. Historians still argue whether the water distribution was as meticulously calculated as Frontinus claims, or if it was a constant, chaotic struggle against leaks, corruption, and inaccurate measurement. Watching Marcus frantically trying to balance the needs of the entire city, you're leaning toward the latter. After an hour of intense discussion, he dismisses you with a wave. Your report is due at the administrative office by dawn. Don't be late. You are dismissed. The water's journey is over, but yours is not. You have one final, dark task ahead, the nocturnal approach to the city itself. Leaving the organized tumult of the Piscina Limaria, you enter a different kind of maze, one not made of brick and water, but of parchment and privilege. The administrative office is a stuffy, windowless room attached to the main complex, smelling of dusty scrolls and sour wine. This is where the journey of the water ends, and the journey of the paperwork begins. And in your world, the paperwork is often more treacherous than any crumbling arch. The clerk behind the desk, a man named Decius, is a human embodiment of a blocked pipe. He doesn't look up as you approach, his bald head gleaming in the lamplight as he meticulously copies figures from one ledger to another. You place your wax tablets and your heavy leather-bound ledger on his desk. The thud finally makes him glance up, his eyes narrow and disapproving. "The Claudia report," you say, trying to sound officious. He sighs as if you've asked him to move a mountain and pulls the ledger toward him. He flips it open, his thin finger tracing your notes. He scoffs at your description of the arcade crack. "Vegetative incursion?" he reads aloud, his voice dripping with disdain. "Could you not be more specific? What genus of plant?" The budget committee will want details. This is the bureaucratic quagmire, a world where a man who has never been more than a mile from the city walls gets to question the judgment of someone who has just walked the length of an aqueduct. The real battle begins when you get to the section on water rights. You noted an unauthorized agricultural diversion near mile marker 32. Decius says, peering at you over the top of his scroll. But you only listed it as minor surface seepage. The form clearly requires an estimate of volume diverted and the name of the property owner for fine assessment. Your heart sinks. You had hoped your vague wording would protect the old man. The tap was rudimentary, you counter, keeping your voice even. It was already failing. The volume was negligible. Identifying the owner seemed inefficient for such a minor infraction. Decius gives you a slow, knowing smile. He knows you're soft. Inefficiency is not for us to decide, Inspector. The law is the law. Perhaps you need a reminder of the penalties for negligent inspection. He lets the threat hang in the air. This is how it works. The lower-level bureaucrats have their own fiefdoms, their own tiny pools of power, and they relish making others wade through them. He then moves to the most contentious issue, the lead pipes. You mentioned the crystalline deposits at the joints. Decius taps the entry. This will require a full survey of the fistulae in the Kalian Hill district. That's a 2-week job for a team of 5. My budget for the quarter won't cover it. You argue that it's a potential health concern. He counters with cold, hard economics. Potential is not proven. The water from the Claudia is celebrated for its sweetness. Are you suggesting the Imperial engineers are wrong? He has you cornered. To push further is to question the entire system, to align yourself with the fringe alarmists. This is the open, scholarly debate made flesh, and the bureaucracy has already chosen its side. The status quo is cheaper. Historians still argue whether the Roman bureaucracy was a well-oiled machine or a sclerotic nightmare of red tape. Sitting across from Decius, the answer feels painfully clear. After an hour of this exhausting, soul-crushing negotiation, a compromise is reached. The old man's tap will be officially recorded as insignificant, a category that requires no further action. The lead pipe survey is downgraded to a visual inspection during routine maintenance, which means it will likely never happen. In return, you agree to rewrite your section on the arcade crack with more alarmist language, which will help Decius secure a larger maintenance budget for his department. A budget you suspect will largely be spent on new inkwells and better wine. You leave the office feeling filthy, not from tunnel muck, but from complicity. You have preserved a single old man's livelihood by helping to perpetuate a system that ignores a city's slow poisoning. The water itself may be pure, but the system that manages it is as corrupt and stagnant as a forgotten system. You step back out into the evening air, needing to escape the stink of papyrus and compromise. The final leg of your journey, the entry into Rome, awaits under the cover of darkness. The bureaucratic stench of Decius's office clings to you, a psychic grime that feels worse than any tunnel slime. You need to move, to outwalk the feeling of compromise. The sun is gone now, the sky a deep bruised purple fading to black in the east. You've missed your chance to enter the city in daylight. The gates are closed, locked until dawn, but your job isn't finished. The final part of your inspection is the most dangerous. The nocturnal approach along the Aqueduct's last vulnerable miles as it skirts the city walls. This is when the Aqueduct's guardians change from stern bureaucrats and lazy legionaries to the shadows and the things that thrive in them. You light your lamp, its flame a tiny defiant challenge to the encroaching dark. The path here is different. It's not a public road, but a narrow service track that runs alongside the aqueduct, now elevated on its final series of arches, as it prepares to plunge into the heart of Rome. The sounds of the countryside have died away, replaced by a new, more sinister orchestra. The chirping of crickets is deafening, and from the dense scrubland to either side of the path, you hear the scuttling of unseen creatures. Every rustle of a bush could be a fox, a wild dog, or something else. The darkness is not empty. It is full of watchful, hidden life. Your imagination, fueled by exhaustion and the soldier's story of spirits, begins to paint pictures in the shadows. That gnarled tree stump becomes a crouching figure. That pile of rocks looks like a waiting ambush. This is when the real physical threats emerge. The aqueduct, this symbol of Roman order, becomes a magnet for the city's disorder after dark. Smugglers use the secluded path to move goods without paying the city taxes. Fugitives hide in the maintenance alcoves. And then there are the Aquarii Nocturni, the night watermen. Not official inspectors like you, but thieves of a more direct kind. These are gangs who specialize in tapping the aqueduct under cover of darkness. not with a simple reed pipe for a garden, but with heavy tools to divert large flows to the illicit bathhouses or tanneries that operate by night, outside the law. An inspector who stumbles upon such an operation isn't an official. He's a witness, and witnesses are silenced. You move as quietly as you can, your lamp shuttered to a thin slit of light, just enough to see the path at your feet. Your heart is hammering against your ribs. This is the part of the job that never makes it into the official records. You're not thinking about gradient or sediment anymore. You're thinking about the knife on your belt and how useless it would be against a group of armed men. You strain your ears, listening for the one sound that doesn't belong. The metallic clink of a shovel, the murmur of voices, the gush of illegally diverted water. The mainstream historical fact is that the Romans had a sophisticated night watch, the vigils, but their beats were within the city walls. Out here, you were on your own. Then you see it, ahead, a flicker of light that is not your own. You douse your lamp instantly, plunging yourself into absolute blackness. You stand frozen, waiting for your eyes to adjust. There, under the massive arches where the aqueduct begins its final descent toward the Porta Prenestina, you see the glow of a shielded lantern. You can make out 3, maybe 4 figures. You hear the sound of metal scraping on stone. They're working on the foundation of the arcade, right where a large distribution pipe emerges. This isn't a small-time operation. This is a major tap. A quirky, terrifying tidbit comes back to you. Some of these gangs were said to be run by disgruntled former aqueduct workers, men who knew the system as well as you do and knew exactly where to strike for maximum profit. Historians still argue whether urban crime in Rome was organized in a proto-mafia structure or was merely chaotic opportunism. Watching the efficient, coordinated movements of the shadows ahead, you feel you have your answer. You can't confront them. You can't even be seen. You sink down into the dry ditch beside the path, the cold earth soaking into your tunic. Your only job now is to stay hidden, to remember the details, and to survive until dawn. The final descent into the city has become a desperate game of hide and seek in the dark. Time loses all meaning in the ditch. You lie perfectly still, the coarse fabric of your tunic soaked through with dew and your own cold sweat. The scrape of metal on stone, the low murmurs of the men working. It's a symphony of criminal intent playing out just 50 feet away. Every snapped twig, every rustle in the undergrowth behind you feels like a footstep. You clutch your knife, the bone handle slick in your palm, knowing its futility. You are a scribe, not a soldier. Your weapon is your ledger, and it is useless in the dark. After an eternity, the sounds cease. A low whistle cuts through the night, followed by the fading crunch of footsteps moving away from the aqueduct, heading not towards the city walls, but deeper into the lawless suburbs. You wait, counting your heartbeats until you've reached 1,000. The silence that returns is heavier, more menacing than before. Have they really gone, or is it a trick? You remain frozen for another long stretch until the eastern sky begins to soften from black to a deep, watery blue. The stars are fading. Dawn is coming. Slowly, stiffly, you push yourself up from the ditch. Every muscle screams in protest. You don't relight your lamp. The pre-dawn grey is enough to see by. You creep toward the arch where the men had been working. The evidence of their night's labour is clear. The interior of the Castellum Aquae is a cathedral of water, a stark, functional space where the journey of the Claudia officially terminates. The roar here is immense, a controlled thunder as the main channel empties into a massive circular receiving basin. The water, after 43 miles, finally seems to exhale, its purpose fulfilled. Marble statues of river gods look on dispassionately as junior officials, looking as fresh and clean as you are filthy, dart between bronze measuring devices, calling out numbers to scribes. You are an anomaly here, a creature of dust and darkness stumbled into a world of polished stone and precise calculation. You find the shift supervisor, a man named Lucius who you've known for years. He takes one look at you, at the grime ground into your skin, and the haunted look in your eyes, and wordlessly hands you a cup of wine. It's cheap and sour, but it feels like nectar. At the base of the massive pier, a section of the protective concrete cladding has been expertly chiseled away, revealing the brickwork beneath. A hole, large enough to fit a fist, has been drilled right into the core of the structure, and a heavy-looking lead pipe, far wider than the old man's reed, has been fitted into it. It's a brazen, professional job. This isn't for a garden. This is for an industry. You place your hand near the pipe and feel a faint vibration. The flow has already begun. The loss of pressure will be noticeable at the Piscina Limaria. Marcus will be furious. You make a quick sketch on your wax tablet, your hands shaking, not just from the cold. This goes far beyond your encounter with Decius. This is a direct assault on the system. The sky is lightening rapidly now, painting the world in shades of grey. The city gates will be opening soon. Your journey is almost over. You stick to the main road now, joining a trickle of other early risers. Farmers with carts, labourers, a few bleary-eyed soldiers returning from night watch. The colossal, multi-tiered arcades of the Claudia and the Annio Novus loom above you, their shadows stretching long in the morning sun. This is the final triumphant approach. The aqueducts stack one upon the other, a staggering display of power, converging as they prepare to enter the city. You pass under the Porta Prenestina, the great gatehouse, and the noise and smell of Rome hit you like a physical blow after the quiet of the night. You are back. The journey is done, but your duty is not. You don't go home. You don't wash off the grime. You walk straight through the waking streets, following the now subterranean path of the Claudia until you reach the one place that matters now, the Castellum Aquae at the Porta Capena. This is where it all began, the distribution fortress where the aqueduct officially ends and the city's network begins. You stand before the massive fortified structure, the morning sun glinting off its marble facing. Inside, the water you followed for 10 days is being divided, measured, and sent on its way to a million destinies. You have your report, the cracked arch, the weeping siphon, the bureaucratic corruption, and now, the nocturnal theft. You have the whole messy, magnificent story of the Aqua Claudia in your ledger. You take a deep breath of the foul, familiar city air and step inside to deliver it. You don't sit. You can't. You stand at the edge of the Great Basin, watching the water, your water, swirl and merge into the pool. This is the moment of truth. All the cracks, the leaks, the siphons, the terror of the night, the moral compromises, it all converges here, in this single, simple fact. The water is flowing. It's not just flowing, it's gushing with a power that vibrates through the marble floor. The level in the basin is high, healthy. Despite the illegal tap you just discovered, despite every loss and inefficiency along the line, the Claudia is delivering. The system, for all its flaws, is working. The immense volume engineered by the ancients is so great that it can withstand 1,000 small thefts and still quench the city's thirst. The feeling that washes over you is not triumph, but a profound, weary relief. You have not failed. The aqueduct has endured. You hand your ledger to Lucius. He flips through the pages, his eyes widening at the sketch of the nocturnal tap. The Praetorian prefect will need to see this, he mutters, before looking back at you with a new respect. You had a busy trip. You just nod, too tired to speak. You've done your part. The information is now in the machine. What happens next? Whether Decius buries it, whether the Vigiles act on it, is out of your hands. Your duty is discharged. You turn and walk out of the Castellum, back into the teeming life of the city.